So yesterday, I spent the whole entire day meeting with parents. They were upset. But however, it was necessary because I learned, or better yet, I was reminded about something that we often forget about our parents as school leaders. Let's talk about it.
When they see me, they know that every day when I'm breathing, it's for us to go farther. You know, every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. You know what I'm saying? Every time I speak, I want to shiver. You know, I don't want them to be like, they know what I'm going to say because it's polite. They know what I'm going to say. And even if I get in trouble, you know what I'm saying? Ain't that what we're supposed to do? I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's our job, is to spark somebody else watching us. We might not be the ones, but let's not be selfish, and because we're not going to change the world, let's not talk about how we should change it. I don't know how to change it, but I know if I keep talking about how dirty it is out here, somebody's going to clean it up.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.
So it's often very easy these days in our very authoritative state of the school system that we look at our parents as them just not understanding and not knowing. We minimize parents as being part of the problem. And this is something that I've definitely been a victim to, because there's this thing where, we professionalized education. And what do I mean by this? Is that once upon a time, teachers, school leaders, I don't even know if we call them that back then, because even the term school leader has a connotation that puts school leaders, or the term school leadership, in the same setting or the same arena as a business leader. But once upon a time, a school leader was someone who actually, a principal or the headmaster, whatever you called it, was a member of the community, was someone who was tied into the community, someone who grew up in the community, someone who members of that community can say, oh yeah, I've known him or her since we were children. Our parents knew each other. We grew up in the same, for lack of better terms, like in the same housing complex, same projects, whatever it is. We were all classmates. We played together. We got into trouble together. We did all these things together, even teachers. And as a result, there was a common understanding, a common experiential understanding of what was happening, what had happened in that space, in that community. And with the professionalization of education, of teachers and of principals, you started to, train people to go into communities. And in the case where you might be from that community, you're being trained to now allow your connection to the community to dictate how you move within that community, because you are supposed to be better than. You are told that you are supposed to be better than. And not only that, you're being given this sort of savior complex. So when you now come into a community, you believe that, or you've been taught that your role is to play savior. The community needs you. So when you hear things like the poorest congressional district, or a desolate community, that's been impacted by gangs and drugs and all these different things that you hear, high need, high risk. What happens is you walk into that space as a teacher, as teacher, leader, administrator, whatever you are. You might have been there for a long time, but you get there nice and early in the morning, and you leave early enough to not get caught in the dark in said community. So you're not a member of the community. You're a member of the school community, but not the greater community. So, as a result, whether it may be intentional or unintentional, you or a lot of educators start to develop this notion of looking down your nose at the community because you are better than and better than, and your job is to come in and help the kids get out of the community or get out of their circumstance or make them better than the community. And while we're thinking like this and doing these things, we fail to realize and we forget that the community that we're talking about is the community that's comprised by the adults, and often these are the parents of our kids. So if you're looking down at the community and you're thinking to yourself, I'm here to save the children, guess what ends up happening? The parents, the adults in that community tend to now kind of become an extension or a reflection or they become the community that you're trying to save the kids from. So what am I saying here? There's a tendency that when parents come into a school building that unless they're docile, unless they're behaving in a manner that we expect of the children, we look down on them. And not only that, often we become sly and we say things, and even if we don't say things, we carry air about us, where we give them lip service. We act like we're listening, but the whole entire time we're telling ourselves, it is your fault that your child is the way your child is, and I'm here to fix it. It is your fault that you have not been able to pull yourself from the bootstraps and, get out of your situation. So I might not be able to help you, or better yet, I'm not going to help you, but I will help your child. Because that is my job, to teach your child so they can become a better citizen, or better yet, they can be better than you. These are the things that we do, and we do unknowingly, and it exists in our communications. It exists in the way we talk about student progress. It exists in our disciplinary actions, and it exists in our school policies. And don't get me wrong, there are instances where we might have members of the community who come in a manner that is abusive and threatening and things of that nature. And I'm not one to believe that I'm going to stand there and allow you to abuse me. Never that. But I believe that I have to exercise understanding of why things are happening, and come up with a solution to change the tides in that space. But okay, I digress. Let's go back to what happened yesterday. I had parents who came in because there was a situation with their children. The children got into it, and as a result, as kids do, you have the threats, the playground threats, and you want to fight, this XYZ and all other stuff. And of course, I asked parents to come in, let me have a conversation. And when they came in, had multiple sides of stories, multiple sides. And like, as you would know, in any situation, there's always going to be multiple versions of what transpired. But what caught me off guard was that in multiple sides of the story was more so exacerbated by the adults on my staff who, at face value, did nothing wrong but try to help the situation. But their biases and their emotional stance in the situation led them to see the situation and talk to the parents in the explanation of what happened in a manner that kind of made things worse. And what I mean by that is often what happens when there's a situation, rather than speaking to our parents with patience and understanding and saying, hey, this is what was brought to our attention. This is what we have gathered so far, and we need you to be part of the solution. Often what we do is we reach out to parents and say, your child did X, Y, Z, or your child is being accused of doing X, Y, Z. And our tone and our demeanor in those conversations become very accusatory, and the parent themselves, they, of course, take a stance to defend their child, especially if they believe from what they're hearing is that their child is in danger or their child is being threatened in a space, in I want to say community, but in a space and time when we, through social media and other spaces, we see that, we see children fighting each other, we see children getting jumped, we see threatening behavior, and all these kind of things. As a parent, you're concerned first about your child, right? So when we speak to parents and we don't slow down to give them as clear of a picture of what we know so far and what the ask is in a calm, cool, and collected manner, because we know our job is to make sure the children are safe, figure out what the problem is, and come to a resolution so we can make things better. And also asking parents to be part of the conversation. When we don't do that and we just make it your child did X, Y, Z and you got to get them out of here right now, then multiple things happen. My child is not safe. My child did something. It's my child's fault. Ultimately, it's my fault. And all these different things. And we forget that often the communities that we work in, the parents grew up in that community. Their parents grew up in that community. And if you have generations of people who've had a negative interaction with the school system, negative interaction with the school system, negative interactions with individuals in the school building, whether it's the same people or not, but their memories as a child in that space was not good, or maybe they were victimized themselves, whether it's emotional, physically, mentally, in the space itself. Guess what happens? You're triggering all kinds of trauma. You're triggering all kinds of PTSD. And what happens, let's be honest here, people who've been hurt, when you trigger them, what do? They lash out. They attack. And I'm not going to say rightfully so, but understandably so. So how are we as human beings, not teachers, not teacher leaders, not school leaders, but as human beings interacting with our fellow human beings? That is something that we need to remember. If we're going to say we're professionals, there needs to be more training for educators on how to control their own emotions when they're dealing with adults and when they're dealing with children. Somebody might be watching this right now and say, hey, Mr. Njoku, I've seen you in action. I've seen you raise your voice. I've seen you. But the thing you have to understand is this. Over the course of 20 years or so, I read the room. There's certain people I'm going to work with or deal with who, no matter what I do, they're not going to like what I say, how I say, and my interaction with them. And they already come in, they're already walking in with their fist up, emotional fist up, ready to fight. But there are a lot of parents, majority of parents, who literally have very high expectations of the people I'm around, the kids, the teachers, even the adults. I set the ground rules and say, hey, this is how we're going to work together to resolve this. And yes, sometimes some parents come in there and they're on edge. But then, I do what I do to get them back to center again, so we can speak as colleagues, so we can speak as community members. My colleagues are not just my teachers. My colleagues are not just my fellow school leaders. My colleagues are the parents, because guess what? Your child is in my building. My child is in the school. Your child is in the school. And my job is to have them educated, but also have them grow and develop into strong, intelligent, responsible adults. The same thing that you want, parent. So why should there be a difference or a line drawn between me and you? Whatever it is that you expect of your child, my job is to find that middle ground so we both are, working together for the benefit of your child. Which means if I step as that line, even when things go left, we always have a center place to come back to. We always have a point of respect to reconnect that and say, hey, I'm here to support you. And then you're here to support me, because the common ground and the common wants is the success of your child. So educators, teachers, teacher leaders, principals, people within the system who connect with parents. Remember one thing. Our parents are very important members of the work that we do. And no matter what their background is, their educational level is, their experiences, no matter what it is, we have to validate it. We have to validate it. And one thing is this: parents, especially when you're not from the community and you're an outsider, they are the oracles. They are the story keepers of the community. They understand the space. And what we learn from them can really, really help us be better at what we do in the school building. And the other thing, too, is we have to ask the question, how can we support you? How can you support me? We're not having those conversations anymore. I realize that because in my head, I know how I move, but I realize a lot of educators don't. They think my job is to come in here and, it's like a put out a fire. I come in here and put out a fire. I don't care about the structure. I don't care about, if this is a historical landmark. My job is to walk in here and just douse water everywhere. And rather than saying, hey, what room do we need to put the fire out at? How can we salvage this to the best of our ability so we can rebuild and make this better? And that's something we need to do better at as educators. Parents are angry because we don't listen to them. Parents are angry because we don't communicate clearly. Parents are angry because we're repeating and reinforcing the trauma that they went through in our schools as children. And here they are now as adults with still their trauma, their anger, and their PTSD. And now we're putting it back on their children as well, and acting as we're completely, ignorant to what we're doing. So we got to do better. Talk to your parents, as colleagues, establish relationships. It's my time. My teachers call the parents. Don't call to the report. Just call you. Sometimes just call. Say, I'm just calling to say how you're doing. And give you some good news. All right, this is Uche Njoku. Thank you so much for your time. Until next time, be well.